Committee meeting to order. This meeting is being held electronically as per section 19.1 of the town's procedure bylaw number 6228-19 as amended due to the COVID-19 situation and will be live streamed on the town's YouTube channel. Approval of the agenda. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda as circulated by Legislative Services?
Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew. In a second.
Joanne.
Thanks, Joanne. Any questions or comments on the agenda?
No.
Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that carries. All right, on to declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest?
No.
Okay. And on to receipt of the minutes. May I please have a motion to receive the meeting minutes of September 8th, 2021?
Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew. And a second.
Aye.
Thanks, Max. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Okay, I will call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries. We have no delegations this evening, so that brings us to the matters for consideration. Item 6.1, the memorandum from Senior Policy Planner regarding Green Development Standards consultation. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew. A second?
Joanne.
Thanks, Joanne. Okay, so leading this discussion will be Matthew Volpin-Testa, so you can lead us on that now. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and good evening. My name is Matthew Volpin-Testa, and I'm here with Lisa House, the Manager of Economic Development and Policy at the town, and Nadia Dalhaniak from Prime Consulting. I'm going to share my screen and put up a presentation that's going to quickly assist in this, but I'm mainly going to speak to it for a couple minutes. So can you all see my PDF?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to skip to something that'll help guide how I explain the GDS. So what is the Green Development Standards, or the GDS? So we're developing a set of principles to apply to new development projects in the town. These principles come across 5 major themes, ranging from energy, water, ecology, building materials, and waste. I think did I miss one? No, that should be all 5. Essentially, we're basically designing a set of characteristics that developers will have to adhere to when we're looking at new developments in the town. So some will be voluntary, some will be mandatory, and the project is split between 2 major phases. Let me get to that slide. So there's a range of benefits in terms of economic, environmental, and social benefits. This committee is important in terms of this is the theme that I missed, actually, complete communities. That's another one of the 5 themes in terms of accessible design when we're looking at sustainable design. So how do you mix the 2? How do you ensure that your design is both sustainable and accessible in terms of building materials, in terms of some of the active transportation elements? So that's some of the things that we're looking at now. So in terms of timeline, we're here now in November, and it looks like we're towards the end, but I'd say we're somewhere about 2/3 of the way. Right now, we're meeting with various committees, this being one of them, the Environmental Advisory Committee being another, the business, the BIA and the Aurora Economic Development Corporation we've all liaised with. And we're going to be meeting with council next week, general committee, to give an update with hopeful implementation of phase 1 starting in the new year. The memo that I provided gives a bit more of a detail of some of the specific targets. We've done a best practices review, looking at other municipalities, not only in the GTA, across the province and the country, and how other municipalities are implementing this GDS. We've also consulted with the building community and the utility companies to find out, what are other people doing, what's acceptable, but also rigorous enough to make an impact and be a good news story for the town of Aurora. And right now we're working with staff specifically to kind of hammer out the specific rules. And when I say rules, an example would be solar readiness. So the concept of building a new home and making sure there's wiring for a solar installation in the future. So if you yourself as an individual bought a new house, it wouldn't come with the solar panels, but you wouldn't have to gut your insides to get to the wiring, for example. Your home would be prepared for you. Another one is electric vehicles. We're looking at things like brick and mortar and the materials that is being used, and the idea of carbon sequestration and impacts on climate change. Again, yeah, these are the 5 themes. And this is where we are now. So again, phase 1 is very much built on development pieces that the town is currently already assessing in terms of materials from developers that they have to submit to show that they're following the new GDS. And then phase 2 will be much more rigorous and tied to things like incentives, where we might say your approval will be expedited in lieu of you providing some of these GDS elements. So it is very complex. There are a lot of subject matter experts from the town that are working on this, and we hope to get council approval in the new year and start working on the GDS in terms of actually implementing it. So if anyone has any questions, this presentation was attached so that you can get a more thorough read. I definitely don't have enough time to go through the whole thing today. As you can see, there are 30 pages, but if anyone has any questions now or in the future, I'll put my email in the chat, and I would happy to take any questions or any thoughts even right now.
I saw 2 things that are missing, in my opinion, noise pollution and light pollution.
That's
So
great advice. Yeah, we don't have noise. Light pollution is part of it, part of the dark sky requirement. It wasn't included in this presentation, but that's definitely a good comment. Looking at dark sky compliance. But noise, that's a good one as well. I'm going to take some notes here. Thank you so much.
yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much for letting me have a
Sorry,
minute.
Matthew. I will jump in. I was just waiting for the committee to have their comments in there. So I apologize for that. In the research that you guys have been doing across the province, I'm curious in terms of the EV stations being implemented, and I know we have a policy coming in for this if it's not already in there. In the research that's been done with a consultant, is there anything on accessible parking and barrier-free parking being associated with these EV charging stations? I haven't seen anything through my contacts or my network, but I'm curious whether or not the consultants have spoken about it or heard of a process that's going to be in place for the future of that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Would it be okay to ask Nadia? She's the expert on the best practices review, to say a word.
Thank you for thank you, Matthew, and thanks for the question, Matt. That's a really good point because we do see standards for EV station and expectations for EV stations in green development standards. And then at the same time, we see green development standards that include requirements for barrier-free parking. I can't say that I've seen any that combine the two, but that's a good point, and I'll definitely have a closer look at where those two things are coexisting together within the same standard. Thank you for raising that.
I know that it's not in the legislation. I know the province is probably starting to look at it, but I think it'd be a good place for the town to be leaders in that initiative versus just waiting for a legislative mandate to actually be coming in. So if we're going to be implementing EV stations around the community, that needs to be considered as well, that barrier-free parking is associated with that piece as well.
Absolutely. That's a great suggestion.
Yeah, and then I was looking through the slides. The only other comment I had, I know there was mention of following the AODA and the integrated accessibility standards. The town will be implementing its own Town of Aurora accessibility guidelines in 2022. So that would just be another thing for the consultants to include in the report, is not only are we going to be mandating that things follow the legislation, but our own accessibility standards and guidelines as well. So Nadia, I don't know if that's to you or Matthew, if I should send that over to you once it's ready, but I can get that over to you guys probably in the next month or so once it's finalized.
Yeah, that would be great. We're definitely interested in how some of the elements of active transportation work too, in terms of trail connectivity and multi-use pathways and making sure they're barrier free, but still having that accessibility. That's part of the complete communities theme. So it might be good, Matt, as well, to send you, we're still in the middle of finalizing them, but the draft final requirements in the complete community section, and getting your feedback as well. So we'll definitely do that.
Yeah, it's a good topic to have on trails. I know the AODA obviously has technical requirements as a minimum standard. I know the committee talks about this whenever we have trail systems coming in. They're bare minimum, right? Like even like gravel systems and stuff, it's still tough for a lot of mobility aids and stuff to actually be using these trails, grades and so on. So more than happy to take a look at that and obviously provide some input. I think one thing to mention, I guess, on the report to council is, we're really looking to have a truly integrated community system for trails included, that your minimum budgetary requirements won't make it happen, right? Like you're going to have to use more expensive materials, focus more on the grading, those kind of pieces in order for the trails to be truly accessible versus just what we're meeting as a minimum standard across the AODA.
Yeah, good feedback. Awesome. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, thank you again. It's great to meet you all, and hopefully we can come back in the new year and give you an update. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much, Matthew. Thank you all. And if there's no further questions, it doesn't sound like there are. I would just like to say just quickly before we move on, I think it's a great initiative and I'm actually really excited about it. And I think that, I mean, if we can marry sort of sustainability and accessibility, I think that's going to be wonderful. Actually, I was really excited to read it. And I apologize, I don't have any sort of meaningful questions, but if I do have any that sort of come to mind, I'll let Matt know that he can sort of pass along to you. But it's really exciting. Okay, so it doesn't sound like there are any further comments. So I will call the vote.
Joanne, just ask one thing, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if it falls into this category or not, but I've noticed a number of times when I've been out into stores and things in town that either people have old flooring or anything at the door, and it's chipping right away from the door, and you either step in it or you get your toe caught in it, and there's other places where I think there's more door openers, or it could be a special thing. I didn't know if this is a spot to bring it up or not, but are those things being considered at all about us going around and seeing the things that are really wrong? Like there's one place where I go to the doctor's office and there's a real chip out of the old hard floors, and it's really, I've caught myself on it twice now, and I've reported it even to the doctor that I go to, but I've gone into the administrative office and asked them about it at the building and just said to them that I had caught my foot on it, and they said that they would look into it, but it's never been dealt with, and it's been a couple of years since I mentioned it to them.
So I'll jump in on behalf of the consultants and Matthew. So I wouldn't say that this, it wouldn't land underneath this specific topic, Joanne.
Yes, okay.
But we can definitely discuss that piece later in the meeting today, but it wouldn't fall underneath the green development standards.
Okay, thanks.
Anything further from anyone? Okay, well, thank you again, both Matthew and Nadia. I will go ahead and call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I'm
Any opposed? All right, that carries. So we move on now to item 6.2, memorandum from manager for economic development and policy regarding streetscape needs and assessment consultation. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Joanne?
Thanks, Joanne, in a second.
John.
Thank you very much, John. Okay, so leading this discussion for us is Lisa House. You can take it away, Lisa, anytime, and thank you very much for joining us.
Great. Thank you very much. And good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. I know we're squeezing onto your agenda and appreciate your time. I wanted to just preface the streetscape needs assessment project that we are bringing forward. The initial streetscape was part of the Promenade Plan built out in 2013, and it highlighted a number of areas of streetscape improvements through the Aurora Promenade area. Later, it became evident that we weren't going to be able to tackle the entire promenade, so to start looking at smaller areas and pinpointed the historic area stretch of Yonge Street. And fast forward through COVID and some challenges we had with some tree boulevards, we wanted to bring it back and refresh it and come back to the committees. And part of that reason is with an official plan update, the promenade update, the accessibility standards coming out, and as you heard earlier, the green development standards. So all of that coming together at once, we said we need to take another look at the streetscape piece again. So we're back to this group to really find out some of your wants, needs, and challenges along Yonge Street that we can try to incorporate into a new streetscape design. So that's our purpose tonight. And I understand we have Andrew and Donna here. They are from the Planning Partnership and our consultants on this project. So I'll turn it over to Donna to kick off, and Andrew. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa. And Andrew, are you on the call as well?
I am.
There you are. Okay. Really appreciate the opportunity to be able to have a conversation with the committee tonight. We wanted to have a pretty open-ended conversation. We have some specific questions, but we really are interested in hearing everything and anything we should know about Yonge Street from your perspective, in particular the stretch from Wellington down to the library. Maybe we won't put up the map, Andrew, but I can just kind of walk through the questions that we put together, and you and we can respond as we see fit. So right up the top of our list, again, we're looking at a very specific segment of Yonge Street, Wellington to the library. In these few blocks, are there specific accessibility issues that the team needs to be aware of? And that could be anything: accessibility, getting into stores, accessibility, curb cuts, the condition of the sidewalk, just anything at all you can share with us.
So I'll paraphrase on behalf of Max, just in case anyone didn't catch all of that. So Max was mentioning, and this is a part of my notes as well, so thank you for covering this, Max. The businesses, I forgot to put my camera on. The businesses on Yonge Street are probably one of the biggest concerns that we hear from residents in the community on a regular basis. Lack of access to be able to actually get over the curbs and into the main entrances is a regular concern, especially with COVID. All the temporary patios that were being put up in the summertime also created barrier-free problems because people would go onto the sidewalk or any of the exterior paths of travel in order to try to just kind of keep their businesses operational. And the second piece that Max was mentioning in there is actual door actuators or wave operators to allow for individuals that might not be able to physically open the door be able to access those businesses as well. So that kind of couples them together with just having access into the businesses that we have on Yonge Street. Max, did I miss anything there? I think I got it all there.
And some stores was there.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's obviously some stores that will have large staircases leading into them. There might be limitations. I know Yonge Street's quite congested from the street sidewalk to building ratio. So whether or not ramps are a possibility would be something to kind of take a look at. But there are some buildings for sure with a decent amount of stairs leading into them that lack that accessibility as well.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I just had, sorry.
Nope, go ahead, Rochelle. I was just going to say I'll go after the whole committee has an opportunity. So I'm just going to turn off my screen and then I'll chime in at the end.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that discussion that Max has started, because that is one of the main things, obviously, that I was going to bring up as well. Was I actually took a little stroll down Yonge Street today just to sort of refresh my memory, even though I do pass by there quite often. And it is actually the main issue for me also is getting into many of those stores and buildings. And I realize that a lot of them are sort of older buildings, and sort of there's an issue there, even in terms of putting ramps out the front. I think there might even be some sort of stipulations as to the sort of the grade of the incline and everything. But I wondered in particular about sort of access from the rear for a few of these buildings, and whether or not any kind of, because I did notice there was sort of an alleyway between, so on the east side of Yonge, that is between the old town hall and the barber shop there. And it's quite a rundown little alleyway, but I thought, okay, if there's maybe one or two alleyways that could maybe be spruced up a little bit, and I don't know, provide an access way to sort of the back ends of some of those establishments, they might then be able to offer access to people, because I do know that I know there's a couple of stores that do have access from the back. And I thought maybe if it was easily accessible from Yonge Street through sort of a repaved, more spruced up little alley, it might actually sort of offer a more pleasant route for someone who's in a wheelchair or any other kind of mobility device to access those shops. So that was just my idea, and also I guess a question at the same time.
I love that idea. Yeah, definitely. Andrew, I can't recall, do we have alleys in this chunk that we're looking at in particular?
Yeah, there's a couple.
Okay, that go on both sides, east and west?
I think so.
Okay, okay, that's really good to know. And we'll have a particular look at those spaces.
Thank you.
What else do we need to know? Andrew, what else is on your list? Do you want to ask the next?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the next question was if there's any concerns with storefront entrances, which I think we have our answer to.
Covered that, yeah. And then the next one, what's one?
The next one, we know that there's been a lot of talks about potentially stringing lights across the road and having kind of banners and things like that on the light posts. So I'm just wondering if there's any clearances we should be aware of for overhead items.
So I'll let the committee see if they know the AODA standards. I'm gonna take a guess. No. There is legislative mandate. I actually am gonna jump into the guidelines that we're gonna be. You guys weren't in for the presentation earlier, so we're gonna be releasing our Town of Aurora accessibility guidelines and standards next month, and that will be a great resource that I can pass off to your team that actually answers those clearance questions. And so that will actually be a very good guidance for you guys on any of the furniture, rest areas, clearances, grades. It handles all of those pieces for both the exterior passive travel and then the interior passive travel into the buildings and what can be done along those areas. So 2.1 meters is generally the area that we want in terms of clearance, headspace. And that I believe that's the measurement that you'll find as a technical standard in the AODA. And that's what would be applied for any of the treescapes or anything else that's done for landscaping as well for Yonge Street.
Okay.
Great.
This is such useful information, and I'm just going in my mind. As always in these kind of conversations on these kind of projects, we are trying to figure out how to allocate the very scarce territory between buildings and allocate that to cars and bicycles and pedestrians. And this is just reminding our design team how important it is to carve out space for everyone in the community. And it's so much more than the little narrow sidewalks that exist there right now. And so this will really help us make a case for, come on, let's take some of the road space and put it onto the sidewalk and pedestrian and people zone of the road, that cars don't get all the space anymore. So it's really, really helpful.
So one of my issues with like the Wellington area between Yonge and Victoria is on the south side of there's a sidewalk. There's two buses that stop just like at Victoria and Wellington.
Yeah.
Going eastbound. One goes to Bayview and goes all the way up to the GO train station in East Gwillimbury. One does the loop onto St. John's Side Road, along St. John's Side Road onto Leslie and all that. The issue with that area is in the summertime, it's full of garbage because businesses and people dump there. And then in the wintertime,
and it's not maintained enough. It's not maintained enough so that it's cleared out. Okay.
And then in the wintertime, the snow plows plow all the snow on the sidewalk and it layers down into ice. Yes. And then the town comes out, tries to take it out, but they can't do that because it's layers of ice.
Right. Yeah. I hate hearing this. This is such a regular occurrence. It is so frustrating. I am really glad you're telling us this.
Just for Andrew and Donna too, that particular corner leads back to the public parking space off of Victoria. So that's an access point we can take a look at, but that gives access to behind that Yonge Street property.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of a busy corner over there.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've mentioned before also that, I know you've heard it before, but the thing is now that you're mentioning about the spaces and where the snow plows are and stuff, they have a real bad habit of putting the snow in a handicap parking spot because it's over at the corner and they push it that way towards the street and they leave it there.
Oh my goodness.
It happens on a regular basis behind the bank and at the corner, and it has happened in other places that I've questioned. Up at Centra, it's happened. And I've gone in and asked for the manager and asked them, and they said, well, it's not us that cleans the parking lot. Well, I think they should have some representative in their building to question what happens to their customers that come in. So anyway, I just very quietly do it, and I don't say anything else about anything. You know, I just ask them why they keep putting it there.
That is outrageous.
There's like a staircase be just next to the H&R block. Okay. And it goes down into the parking lot behind, like it's on the west side of Yonge Street.
Okay.
And there's a little, like, it's like a staircase. One of the major issues is the only accessible parking spot on that side of that area is in the far corner near Wellington in that parking lot. And people have to go up and around onto the Wellington sidewalk and then back onto Yonge. So all the snow issues that happen on the other side of near Victoria on Wellington also happen on the other side at Wellington, which makes the accessible parking spot unusable.
Okay.
And I know right now the way it's set up, the sidewalk that goes down with those stairs doesn't have capacity for a ramp, but you could probably fit in a three-piece ramp system. So one section break one section,
Yeah.
break one
Break.
section, and then a curve cut to prevent
Okay.
people from driving into it.
Okay.
There is accessible parking bar below that area and right across from the library, and there used to be an arts music store there. There is a very free parking spot below there, and there is an elevator, but there's no door to get to the elevator.
Get to the elevator.
Just to make, I think you caught all of that, Donna and Andrew. So am I good there, or would you like for me to just paraphrase what Max was mentioning?
Maybe just a quick paraphrase, sure, just to make sure we did get it right.
Yeah, so Max was mentioning across from the library, there was an arts music studio, and I believe on the opposite side that there was a barrier-free parking. That's technically, to get access to it, you have an elevator that brings you up, but
Yeah.
there is no doorway actuators from the elevator afterwards to then be able to get over to the exterior path of travel. So although there's parking available and an elevator available, you can actually still
Can't
get
get in.
access to the paths. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And
Okay.
Go ahead, Matthew.
another thing I'm gonna steal something that Haley always is concerned with. A lot of the downtown Aurora, it's a lot of echoes because of all the traffic and the noise. So
Okay.
one of the issues is a lot of people that have special needs that are not maybe not mobility issues, but are sensory needs. They find the downtown core very overwhelming because of all the sound.
Oh.
So if there was a way that you guys could incorporate noise reducing
Wow.
aspects, anything would help than the current situation.
Okay.
Yeah, the acoustics in there from that tunnel over there have quite a bit of rebound. And so that was one of the things I think Max has mentioned in previous meetings with taking a look at our facilities as well. So that was a good point to bring up there, Matthew.
That is a really good point because, we're also looking for more reasons to be stronger about diverting truck traffic to alternative routes as opposed to coming right downtown, and also diverting some car traffic to alternative routes because Aurora is lucky that there are options. And so that might be another way to try and convince others that there's benefit in rerouting truck traffic and some of the high volume of pass-through traffic. That's I've not heard of that as a concern. Thank you very much for that.
There is also no good signage idea as a publicly there's a lot of parking
Not a parking
on the west side
on the one side.
on the building, but it's not very obvious
Yeah.
Thank you, Max. So Max was mentioning there that, and this is one of the points I was going to mention as well. It would be good for the downtown core. And I think Matthew was mentioning this at our previous meeting as well for just subdivisions in general. A little bit more wayfinding signage for not only businesses, right, but to what Max was mentioning, to where the barrier-free parking or just parking lots are, or if there's going to be some kind of on-street parking, corridors to lead to like what Rochelle was mentioning earlier, if there's going to be access from the rear of buildings. So wayfinding signage would be beneficial for not just people with disabilities. I think wayfinding signage is beneficial for everybody to know where they're going, especially if they're a visitor of the municipality and just coming in to check out the downtown core. So that's a very good point.
Yeah, very good.
One last point that I want to make is a lot of, like in Canada, we always go, the sidewalks go down and then you cross on the road. But one of the things I found fascinating about like other countries, and especially in Europe, is they actually use the crosswalk as the cars have to go over the sidewalk, so to speak.
Yes.
And I haven't seen that done in Canada yet.
Yeah.
But I know that that's a huge aspect, because it tells drivers that, hey, this area is for pedestrians. You have to drive for the pedestrians. You're not driving a car. It kind of reinforces the risky feeling of driving, which helps them slow down and take their time and hopefully prevent so many accidents, which is Yonge and Wellington is notorious for accidents every day almost.
Yeah, that is a great idea, Andrew. Do you know how we've done that on some of our projects, correct? Where we bring the road grade up to the.
Yeah. I can't remember any off the top of my head, but I know we've looked at raised crosswalks.
Yeah. And so to exactly that point, it says pedestrians have priority here. Yeah. Car drivers, you slow down. You're coming up over a bit of a speed bump.
Yeah. And there's often a material distinction too, which is helpful.
Yes.
As long as doesn't impede like the use of the pedestrian crossing. I know I know one of the members who's not here right now, she's always concerned about like brick kind of materials because they crack and break. And she knows from her work personally that people like that have trouble moving over that material. So
I currently live at Carleton University, and they have used that for some of their crosswalks, and I've been able to use them. No problem.
Max was mentioning he's currently at Carleton University out in Ottawa, and so they have the same kind of crosswalks. Max, I didn't catch whether you're referring to the materials that Matthew was regarding, like the type of material, or whether or not the crosswalk itself was an issue. Are they using like interlocking materials versus just like a concrete, or?
Sidewalk material.
Yeah, with regards to material, I think the comment that I would make is I think most materials can be accessible. It's the maintenance policy that is behind them that's the important piece. So it's not a conversation of whether it's interlocking, concrete, or whatever. It is someone maintaining and looking after it, right? Because all those materials will fail at some point, and they just need to be redone. So I think it's a matter of having a maintenance policy and ensuring that those are being looked after to ensure that at any point that if any of them falter, that they are immediately replaced to provide that barrier-free path of travel.
I know one of my concerns when we put in that like rainbow crosswalk was the fact it'd be slippery. And I knew I shared some concerns with that with the roads department and other people at the town of Aurora. And I know the way they addressed that issue is they added some more grit to it, the material. So they mixed in more grit, which made it less shiny, but more grippy to people that were walking across it.
Andrew, do you want to drill into the question about materials a little bit further, or is that?
I think that pretty much answers it. We were just wondering if we are looking at straying from kind of the typical concrete sidewalk, if there's anything that would be off limits. Sounds like it's more of a maintenance question rather than.
Yeah, it's opinion based, right? You're gonna get some
Okay.
individuals that lean one way or another. My personal and professional opinion on it is it's a maintenance piece, because you look at any material category, there's going to be different grades of how, like what Matthew was mentioning, like how slippery they can be, right? And so I'm not going to say that one thing can be, it'll depend on the specific material being used that needs to be addressed for that situation. So I'm okay with any of them, as long as, like I said, there's a strict maintenance policy that's kind of adhered to as well, to ensure that if anything goes wrong, that it's immediately addressed. Because I mean, we can, and this was, Joanne was mentioning this in the previous conversation, if things aren't looked after, then there's cracks, nooks, and things that people kind of trip their toes over or anything else, and it leads to injury, right? So that's, like I said, to me, it's a maintenance piece versus an actual material piece.
Okay. Okay.
Joanne, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, go ahead, Joanne.
The walkway on the west side of Yonge that goes down to the parking lot that we were talking about as it's graded downward, is there any possibility or any thought, I mean, I know we live in a country that has heavy winters and stuff like that, but could there be any thought given to enclosing it and making a movable ramp? That would bring more people out of the back parking lot up to the main street, able to park there.
An escalator.
Oh, they're not just a movable ramp, you know, like you have them in different things and stuff like that, and people their wheelchairs could go on, they could carry them up, but they would be covered over and closed in so that the weather can get at it, and you know, you could put see-through walls or whatever you wanted, but I don't know, it was a thought I had that it can't be used more, you know.
Okay.
I didn't know the feasibility though, so.
Okay, well, we'll definitely take a note of it and talk to our team about it. Great. Thank you for that.
Can I provide a comment? Can we also look at, if we're going to look at accessible parking spots on Yonge Street, and if the town wants to take back that curb lane, maybe have an accessible spot at the far north end on Yonge Street and the far south end?
Yeah.
Because with the addition of the United Church and the seniors complex that's going to go in there, the housing, you're going to need additional spots. Trucks turning on Yonge and Wellington. Is there any way of having the region to ban that? I know in Bradford, the main east-west north intersection there, the old Yonge Street, there's no trucks turning.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
So no heavy trucks turning, because driving a truck, you're looking for markers, and the easiest ones to see would be the telephone poles. People with disabilities, maybe visual, hearing, may not see the truck actually make that sharp turn, may not see the back axles. I think we've seen in the city of Toronto a number of cyclists get hit by the back axles of a trailer. So if we can actually have no heavy trucks turning, Yonge and Wellington.
Well, and I also really appreciate the examples of where that's already occurring in other locations, so we can talk and share that with our whole team. And we can go have a look at it too.
I've been walking across have been hit too in Toronto, and that's because the trucks also are very high and they can't always see down below where they're going, so right close to the curb.
That part of Wellington and Yonge is technically owned and managed by Aurora.
Yes.
So I don't think they'll have to go through the region for that, because I've had issues down there, and the region's always said it's Aurora's problem, not ours.
Yeah, that is a very good point. You are right. It is the town's road. Okay. Thank you for that.
So I will chime in very quickly. I think what I'll do is I'll send you guys a list of a couple of the items I think to look after just to make it a little bit easier. But I think a couple of things, even outside of just like us constructing, spending money, is taking a look at policy. One of the things that we've added to the accessibility plan, and I think it can be integrated pretty well into this, is taking a look at our bylaws for parking. Similar to what Toronto is doing in a couple of our neighboring municipalities, they have accessible bylaw parkings where even if, so one of the pieces, and I know John was mentioning, there is obviously barrier-free parking. So on-street parking, that's important. And then there's the actual policy that goes behind it as well. Some people might not necessarily have an issue where they need a curb cut or anything. So for some of the regular parking spots or metered parking spots, Toronto, for example, has exemptions for those with accessible permits. And so they're able to park in those areas. They don't have restrictions for timing, for example, to assist them with being able to access the downtown core. So outside of just spending money, there's an opportunity for us to take a look at our policies as well to ensure that people with those permits are able to take advantage of the main street over there. And then, of course, we would want to look at the actual on-street parking. Now, I actually have a question for the consultants. I haven't really seen these rolling curbs. Is there, I guess, rules or jurisdictions where or how long rolling curbs can be? Because if we had on-street parking, which we do throughout Yonge, and there was a rolling curb, I guess the barrier-free parking would be less of an issue. But I imagine that there's some safety precautions or things that we would have to consider to not have a rolling curb running up the entire intersection over there. Just curious.
Can you explain what you mean by rolling curb?
Yeah, so normally we'll have like a curb depression, right, for someone to be able to access onto an exterior path of travel. I've seen in other smaller municipalities quite a bit away from Aurora where they actually have the entire sidewalk basically depressed down to the roadway. So like, you know where you're supposed to park, but then from any of those spots, you're able to access right onto the exterior path of travel. So you're not limited to a spot with a curb depression. You can park anywhere along the street and be able to access the sidewalk. But again, I don't know the safety measures or whether or not there's some legal considerations for that portion of it.
I'm glad you brought it up. It was one of my questions actually for the group on those type of curbs. Are there challenges with some of them? We've seen in some municipalities, even some of the little depressions. So is there, will there be standards in the FAD's design or any considerations for those type of curbs?
Yeah, so the guide or the standards will provide you grading for the flares and the actual ramp up into the exterior path of travel, but it won't have anything indicating whether or not we could have like a whole like curb rolled out as a curb depression. So if we don't know, that I think would be something to do a little bit of research on. I think that takes away a lot of the limitations, because like when you're looking at on-street parking, you're really talking about like maybe 1 or 2 additional spots specifically to barrier-free parking. And like I said, if we take a look at it a little bit more wholesomely as a whole stretch, I think people will be able to take advantage of it, even those that don't have severe mobility issues and have an actual permit. So maybe that's food for thought. But yeah, the standards will have specifications for the grade of the actual curb cut and any of the flares that would be on the sides of it. And I wanted to also just go on top of what Joanne was mentioning earlier. One of the points I wanted to talk about was protection from weather, because our sidewalks are pretty narrow over there. Whether or not there is an opportunity for like awnings or anything coming off of the buildings for winter or during rainy seasons or wherever, where people are able to basically walk through. And I know that's kind of probably like a difficult one to answer, just because some people obviously want to have just access to the sun, and then there's obviously protection from winter and rain, right? So that would be, I think, a consideration for the downtown core, especially to what Joanne was mentioning from the barrier-free parking lot that we have on the west side. I think it is from Yonge Street over there, at least so that people are able to then access onto the main roadways after going up that pretty steep grade over there. And then everything else, I think I'll message you guys. I was going to mention like service animal relief spots. I don't see a lot of those kind of being implemented around like downtown cores or city areas, right? So if people are walking with their service animals, having a location for them to be able to relieve themselves would be a consideration. But I'll send out an email, I think, with the majority of my points, and then I'll CC
Awesome.
the committee on there for them to be able to add on to that because of time at this point.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Okay.
Are there any further comments or questions from the committee?
Andrew, do we have anything else, other questions that we need to ask? That
So Matt, I think you said you were going to send along some furnishing details with clearances and stuff like that.
Yep. So
Okay, perfect.
we're just finalizing. So actually, timeline wise for you guys, where are you guys in the stages where you need like concrete information? We're about 99% done. We're just kind of playing with the details. So our official rollout should be in the next 2 weeks. So
Okay.
I can have that public hyperlink available for you guys to take a look at in like the coming weeks.
Awesome.
If it gets pushed off a little bit later, I'll send you the internal site for you guys to use regardless. So that way you can take a look, because the specifications on these kind of items aren't going to be changing at this point. We're just kind of ironing out the details for the document at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there any conversation about tech, I guess, being implemented as well? So I know I was surprised Matthew didn't bring this one up, but he's mentioned a couple of times in our previous meetings about having technology to let people know about it, the availability of parking spots and locations being available. So I think that would be a consideration, and then Wi-Fi as well for the downtown core.
The downtown core does have access to the York Region Telecom network. There is like 3, I think I know of 3 fiber terminals. So there's definitely usage for that, and it wouldn't be hard to do.
Okay.
And again, I thank you for bringing that up. I'm waiting in these groups to see where the technology leads, but if there's anything technology related that enables and enhances the experience for all mobilities, we would be definitely interested in hearing that. What we want to do is make this area ready for the future as well, and not just running new stuff and new sidewalks and benches, but looking forward to the future on that. So any of those ideas, pass them along, please.
One of the good organizations to look at is a company called Sidewalk Labs.
Yes. Yeah.
They're a division of Google,
Yeah.
and they've had a lot of interesting and unique perspectives that most people don't see until it is the current.
Yeah.
But they're always thinking ahead. So
Yeah. Okay.
I just have one last comment, if I may. The engageaurora.ca/street downtown streetscape is open. So if there are members that weren't able to join today or have ideas, obviously sending them through Matt and through the committee, but that's open to public as well. So feel free to share that site to get more feedback and input. Thank you.
Anything further from any other committee members? Okay, well, it sounds like there are no further comments. I just want to thank you all, Lisa, Donna, Andrew, for that presentation and for going through that with us. It's really great to know that the downtown core is going to be sort of revitalized in that way, and especially with accessibility sort of a key point in your mind. So I think that's great. Thank you very much for answering our questions and taking all our feedback into consideration. So with no further comments, then I will go ahead and call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Okay, so moving on, we turn now to item 6.3, and that is the memorandum from Accessibility Advisor regarding site plan application OPA-2021-04, ZBA-2021-05, SP-2021-10, submission number 1, and this is for 271 Holiday Drive. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew. And a second?
Max.
Thank you, Max. Okay, Matt, did you want to lead us on this?
Yes, I can do that for you guys. Let me just share my screen, and then we can get going. All right. Everyone see everything okay?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Can you
Let
tell
me
me,
just,
because I'm not seeing it, can you tell me what page we're at? I'm trying to
Joanne,
find it.
always something from you. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to find it too. So
It's all right.
I
Don't,
will.
don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'll find
No,
it.
no,
I just,
no.
I
I'm
got
just
my
messing
everything
with
in
you.
front of me, but
Okay. So if someone can actually help me out with what page this is on, because my screen, I can't see it. Can someone let Joanne know where we're at?
Page 75 is where the images are.
Beautiful.
Page 74 is the
75?
memorandum.
Thank
did
you,
you say
Matthew.
75?
Yes, I did, Joanne.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, perfect. So great discussion earlier, guys. There was some great comments that were coming over there. So let's jump over to our site plan applications. I got an hour to bust through 4 of these. So let's do this. All right. Okay. Let's see if we can manage that. I don't think so, but we will try our best. So first one we're going to be taking a look at is on 271 Holiday Drive. Each of the site plan applications we're going to be taking a look at had a couple of issues. So we will go through them like we normally do. So taking a look at the main plan, let me just zoom in for you guys. That should be good. Okay, so on this unit, on the exterior, what you can see is we only have about 5 visitor parking spots out on the outside. So if you take a look at the top right corner, you can see that there is a main entrance coming over from, I think this is Leslie Street, right? So yep. In the corner of Leslie Street and Holiday Drive, you have your main exterior path of travel with the main entrance leading into the building. The path of travel goes all the way along Holiday Drive and then leads across over into the neighborhood. Driving into the actual facility itself, you have 1 barrier-free parking spot on the exterior. And so you can see over here, they have indicated that they have 1 type A spot. They didn't do a great job of highlighting the access aisle, but it is there. And one of the difficulties with looking at this map is there is a path that goes right here. So this right where the aisle is, everyone can see my mouse hovering over there. Right from the access aisle, there is a curb depression that I found afterwards. So you'd notice in my comments that I was mentioning that curb depression is required. So they did include one. And this leads into a path of travel over here that kind of goes between the landscaping. And on the west side, you will see another entrance into the building. So there is access in order to go from the barrier-free parking around the building to an entrance. And then obviously right next to the access aisle, there's also a doorway into the building that allows access. So there's a couple of entry points into this specific building. One of the comments that I did make for this is the cross slope itself. So a part of the new guidelines and standards that we're going to be putting in there are pretty strict. And obviously this is for us as a municipality, but I'm going to be starting to influence the comments into the developer work, is asking for proper cross slopes and running slopes for the barrier-free parking as well. So I did indicate in the comments afterwards, because the guidelines are just being finished off, that we would request that they have 1% and a 1.5% maximum cross slope over here. So that way you have pretty flat grounds for anyone that's actually parking in the barrier-free parking and being able to get out without having their mobility aid roll off on them or having any issues with stabilizing themselves before going on to the path of travel. So that was one of the comments that we indicated for this piece. There is an outdoor amenity for this building. So you can see over here where my mouse is highlighting right now towards the lower half of the building. There is outdoor amenity. There is an entrance coming in over here from the east side of the building. They are indicating that it's a flat grade entering on over here. So I didn't have any comments. There's no ramp or staircases to worry about on this specific location. There is a couple of rest areas highlighted over here. So along the landscaping, there is some rest areas with ample room on the side as well for anyone that's using a wheelchair or a larger mobility aid for them to be able to go next to the actual chairs and sit down with anyone that they'd like to. So those things looked okay. In terms of comments, our regular comments were included. So obviously ensuring that public operators, not public operators, but door operators are available for all the public access locations, right? So the main entrances and the amenities were included in that. Tactile indicators for any of the staircases, all of those pieces were included. I did put a comment in There is no indication that they have any eating areas, but usually with the outdoor amenities, just in case they just didn't include it in the drawings, that's one of the comments that I usually include over there. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into the next site plan applications. So over here, you can see we have some underground parking as well. We have 2 floors of parking. We have about 5 barrier-free parking spots. On the I think it was the first floor, let's see. Yep, P1 over here, we have 3 parking spots, a mix of type A and type B, so the ratio is good for that piece. And all of them are close to the vestibule that leads into the actual elevators of the building. So I had no issue with the locations of the barrier-free parking. You'll see over here on P1 that there looks to be some kind of gap between the parking spot and the access aisle. So this is one thing I want to speak, I didn't put in the comments, but I want to speak to the developer about this, ensuring that this isn't some kind of support area where the parking spot doesn't have access to the access aisle, because the access aisle does need to be connected directly over to the barrier-free parking. So that's one point of clarification that I would have to have with the developer. But the spots on P2 looked okay. As you can see over here, the barrier-free parking spots both have their connectivity to the access aisles. And again, vestibule leading into the elevator is right there. So no concerns on P1 or P2 from my perspective. Taking a look at the levels, similar to most of the residential buildings that we look at, hallways, elevators, and suites essentially for the floors. So there was no amenities on these floors, so there's nothing really for us to take a deep dive into. So I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. This is the main floor. So the drawings, for those of you that are following along, the first drawing over there is the second floor, and the bottom half is the actual ground floor. And so over here, we'll go into a little bit more detail, and I'll zoom in for you guys. So you can see we had our entrance leading into the building. There is an amenity space over here. And as you can see, they have a couple of ways to enter into the outdoor amenity. So they have the main entrance over here, and they have a couple of these doorways leading in from the exit staircases. So those on the upper levels, if they choose to take the staircase down, are able to exit and enter onto the amenity. For those people that would be using the actual elevator is located right here in the middle of the site plan application. They have the vestibule room where they are able to enter out. And as you can see over here from this entrance over here, they're able to then go on to the actual outdoor amenity as well. So there is a couple of access routes that lead to outside, and all of them look to be flush with basically the entrances and exits. So no ramps or stairs for us to really be concerned about. So I'm just going to zoom out, and then we can proceed with that in a second. So now we're just looking at the next couple of levels. So we're talking level 3 and 4 over here, which are identical. Again, nothing to really discuss over here. All of these are suites with elevators. And then the upper half is level 5, which is just a little bit different, where you have some larger suites. And then final drawings. There is no rooftop amenity on this specific site plan, so nothing on the top for us to really speak about. And then again, the 6th floor is basically just suites for people to be living into. So no rooftop terraces or anything along those lines. The final drawings are just elevations, so you get an idea of what the building looks like. And just take a look at my comments, but I don't think I had anything past what I was mentioning over there. Actually, Max's favorite, I did put in there as well for just the evacuation stair or the evacuation chairs for consideration. So that was in there as well. But yeah, so I'll pass it over to the committee for comments. Other than that, I had nothing else to add in for the specific site plan application.
I'm really trying to find something, but I can't find anything yet.
Well, there's a couple coming up that I'm sure you have comments on, Matthew. There's some good ones coming your way.
The only thing I caught, which is not part of the site plan, but it is part of the document, is it says State Farm Way. They changed that to Desjardins Way. But anyways, that's it.
Just one thing on the ground floor parking. I know there's only 5 spots.
Yeah, let me
and
jump
One
up.
of them is the accessible spot. Where it says the moving or garbage pickup, can they make that for a courier drop off as well? And no courier drop off at the handicap spot, the accessible spot, sorry. Only being is that they're gonna see that open and just grab that one.
This is on P1 or
Ground-
P2?
Ground
Oh,
floor.
ground floor.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So in this day and age of Amazon, which I hear they're pretty popular right now, is they'll just take that spot, right? Only be a minute. Famous last words.
So you're talking right over here, right, John? Like this area?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So that no courier parking. That's the only thing, really.
Okay, got that note. Thank you.
It's Joanne here. I'd just like to ask, it seems to me that even though we've been meeting ourselves for a while, and I know it's been going on for many, many years other than that, now that we're into being more careful about having spots for people with challenges, and because we're also aging in population, where a lot of those people are requiring means of having handicap stickers or whatever, it amazes me that the handicap spots really don't appear to me, anyway, to have increased a great deal. I know they have a system to say how many they have per parking spots and all that, but when you consider how many people there are that will have these issues, and there's more of them having them, I'm just surprised that we haven't increased in having them. That's all.
You're putting me in a difficult situation, Joanne. You want me to challenge your opinion? That is definitely a perception piece, right? And so we know we have the legislative requirements that we must uphold. I'm more than happy always, like it'll come down to the committee. If we ever look at a site plan application where we feel like this is a spot that we require further accessible parking, that's where I come to the committee, and I would want to hear from you guys if you feel like we should be going above the standards here. From a developer perspective, they have met the minimums, right? So that will always be what I kind of have to jump back on, which is they've done what they need to. But I'm more than happy to vouch on behalf of the committee if you feel that this specific site plan application or any of the other ones that we're looking at, where you feel we require further barrier-free parking, I'm more than happy to go to bat with the developer and put that piece in. So you guys just need to vocalize if we're looking at any of these where you think that we require a couple extra spots and the rationale, and then I'm more than happy to go ahead with that piece. It's not an issue.
Well, some of our challenges are also being that we're looking at things that have been given to us to go through, but we have many things from the past that have been left the way they are, and I don't think we're, in a lot of instances, we are meeting the demand that we need for the handicapped spaces. But anyway, that's just my thinking.
Yeah, and I agree with you that the private lots that are older will always be an issue. We can't demand that they do retro work or work on it until they start kind of putting shovel into the ground, where then they have to meet the new standards. But I agree that there's definitely issues with the old builds that we have around the town of Aurora, with not only just the barrier-free parking and the amount of it, but the actual access onto the paths of travel into these buildings, like we were talking about earlier with these businesses, just having access into the buildings themselves. So there's a lot of work around that to be had for sure.
Yeah.
This building kind of reminds me of the one that's near Town Hall, that gray building behind Town Hall, because the rooms are like, the suites are about the same size. And that building, even though it wasn't designed or like marketed as an older person's building, it did turn into that. So I could see the need for, as Joanne said, more accessible parking.
Yeah, well, the thing is more people as they age are leaving their homes. A friend of mine phoned me today and said, my kids think that it'd be a good idea for me to move out of my house. Well, the thing is, a lot of people who have a house and are able to look after it, which she is, are doing this because their family thinks it would be easier for them and everything else. And she thought that she'd have more companionship. So the thing is, I think in a great deal of things, there's more people doing it. And I just thought it was a sort of a thing we should think about, or at least for the township.
I agree, Joanne.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably the tenants would drive that once they move in. I know there's a legal requirement to have the minimum, but probably the tenants will drive that.
And the tenants do try to drive that as well. Like I've seen where they're speaking with the building owners. Obviously, if we tackle it at the development stage, then we save people having to have that fight. There's also the balance of those that wouldn't require barrier-free parking and how much parking they have room in these buildings, right? And so in this case, just to kind of wrap this one up, because I know we have a lot of site plans to go through, are you guys indicating that we want to take a look at adding additional barrier-free parking? If so, how much and which floors are we taking a look at?
I not suggest and become as you say. The balance was non-accessible spot.
So one of the things I'll mention is this is like my personal OCD, but I like to see things the same on both sides. So like maybe we take a look at these two parking lots where we have at least the 3 spots on P1, and then we take a look at providing an option of having at least the 3 spots on P2, if that works for you guys.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at, yeah.
That's good.
It looks like every 3 spots of regular parking would make up 2 accessible. On the ground, on the parking level 1, if you look right across where we have the 2 spots side by side, look directly across the drive aisle and there's 3 spots.
Yeah.
So
it's not zooming in for me. I don't know why.
So they would lose 1 spot for every 2 accessible spots created.
Sorry guys, having tech issues here. There we go. So you're looking over here, right, John? Just based on the spots. Yeah, 3 spots.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I've made that note. I can add that in for the developer. That's not an issue. Any other comments outside of parking for this site plan? Okay, we look good then. Rochelle, back over to you.
Okay, so if there are no further comments, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that carries. Okay, so we move on now to item 6.4, memorandum from Accessibility Advisor regarding site plan application SP 2021-11. This is submission number 1 for 25 and 29 George Street. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Matthew.
John.
Thank you, Matthew and John. Okay, and Matt, you can take it away.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. All right, Matthew, check this one out, all right? You want the comments? Here you go. Okay, so for this site plan application, it's a little bit of a mix. So we have existing buildings over here. Oops, excuse my click. We have existing storied buildings over here on the street and then everything around it. So we've got, I think this is a 3-story and then a 4-story building behind it. On the north side are going to be the new builds. So we do have some existing infrastructure to look at here, and then we have the actual new build and the new development that's coming in as well. what's interesting about this site plan application is the grade that we're working on. So you would have seen on the preliminary drawings of what the building is supposed to look like in terms of elevation, that there's going to be quite a bit of ramping happening to get over to the main entrance. So off of George Street, there's a couple of issues right off the bat. So right where my mouse is hovering, pretty much on that intersection of George Street, and I apologize, I don't see the intersection for the bottom here, but there is a ramp that leads up to a platform. And then from the platform, we have a ramp that leads up to the main entrance of the new proposed condominium. Now, the minimum standards one for an exterior path of travel is 1.5 meters. Here we've got indicated 1.2 meters. So that's a boo-boo. But the bigger boo-boo really is the fact that we're dealing with a ramp leading up into the main building. So the legislation requires platforms for both the entrance into a ramp and off of a ramp, right? So you've got the bottom and the top of a ramp that requires platforms. The platform minimum is required to be 1.67 meters. And so that's a square box. So you would require basically the platform over here on the bottom to be 1.6, I'm just rounding, but it's 1.67 over here on the bottom. And then that would have to also be at the top of the ramp as well. And so you can see what they've done over here right into the entrance of the building. Not only did they not meet the minimum 1.5 meter, just regular exterior path of travel, but they have absolutely no space in terms of being able to have a turning radius leading into that main entry. So that's one of the big concerns with this proposed application. The second piece on top of that, not only do we have issues with the platform and the width, but the actual grade leading into this. I didn't include just because of how many drawings we had, but I'll tell you straight up that both this ramp over here leading into the main entrance and the ramp leading up beside the existing building onto the deck, both don't meet the requirements of the minimum grade of a ramp. So they have to address the width, they have to address the platforms, and they have to address the grades of both of these ramps leading into the proposed condominium. So that's to kind of start this site plan application off. There's quite a bit of issues with that piece. Outside of that, it's a pretty simple building. So I don't know how they plan on addressing those clearances because it looks like they're very close over here to the sidewalk. So I don't know if they plan on cutting back on the building. I don't know if they'll go to council asking for an exemption. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, but I don't see a lot of space for them to meet these requirements afterwards. So again, we'll see what they come back with. But I did mention to them that they have to address the ramps, the grading on the site plan application. Past that, regular comments, right? So for any of our public entries, making sure that door operators are provided. In this case, I mean, this one leads into the building, but like if this door is flipping the other way, like it would cover pretty much the entire exterior path of travel, right? Like they've left pretty much no room for anyone to be able to really kind of get into this building. And then just our regular tactile indicators for the proposed staircases. You can see that there's a ton over here, right? So from the ramp, we have a deck that leads into the existing building. And then you have staircases that lead to another paved walkway, but then you have staircases that go down over by the garbage area into the other terrace, lots of staircases on the outside of this building. Now, as we go through the following drawings, you will see that there is quite a bit of outdoor amenities. So let's flip past this main drawing. And so they do have some parking on the lower level. They have not a lot of visitor spots available for this. You can see, what do they have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 regular visitor spots, and then they have a resident and a visitor accessible parking spot. So to the conversation that we were having earlier here, not that it's half, but it's pretty close to pretty much a distribution for barrier-free parking. So they have their type A, they have their type B, and they have their access aisle. They have placed the barrier-free parking on the closest path of travel into the building. So you can see once they leave from their vehicles, they can enter into the vestibule, and they have just like a basic lobby over here with an elevator that leads up into the building. So that's nice and close. And then on the back side of these parking spots, they've provided 34 bicycle spots as well. So that was a interesting piece for that. So that's it, I think, for this picture that I wanted to indicate. Just wanted to take a quick look. Yep, so let's jump over to the next one. Okay, so now into the actual main floor. So once people take the elevator up from the underground parking, you can see over here, you have your main entrance lobby with your vestibule. And then pretty much on the main floor, you're gonna find just your regular units and suites going along the entire building. And then pretty much each of the floors do have an outdoor amenity. And so they're all covered underneath that comment of making sure that we have the door operators for any of the public access. So all these outdoor amenities would be included underneath that comment. We'll jump over to the next floor and you'll see, similar to most of the condominiums that we take a look at, pretty much the same story, right? We have our unit bedrooms pretty much going across the main floor. And then we have the odd amenity room. And then as we go through each of the floors, some of them have additional outdoor terraces as well for people to take advantage of, right? So here we go on another floor. What floor are we on right now? Let's see. This is on the 4th floor. And so you can see over here, they do have an additional outdoor amenity. They have an indoor amenity, and then they pretty much just have the basic suites over here that lead over to the elevator. And so pretty basic site plan outside of the enormous issue of actually being able to get into the building. But the rest of it is very simple. So I didn't have any additional comments on the interior because there's pretty much just a couple of units per floor with your elevator. Here are the elevation drawings. So this one's a good indicator of what we were talking about, right? So let me just zoom in for you guys. So you'll see that you're gonna have basically a ramp leading up into the building over here. They should have a platform flat over here with minimal cross slope, and then that ramp leading up over here. And this is where we have that biggest issue. You pretty much have those stairs leading up right to the doorway where there isn't pretty much anywhere to stand, right? So that was what we were discussing a little bit earlier. And that's pretty much it. So the rest of the pictures over here are just our elevation drawings. This is the existing building over here on the south elevation drawing that we were talking about. And then the rest of it is all proposed new buildings. And so I will stop over here and just see whether or not there are any additional comments that you guys would like to add in.
How is someone that has to throw out their garbage with a mobility issue going to get down all those stairs? Like there's a lot of stairs in this place.
A lot of stairs. I didn't actually, let's see if they indicate on any of these floors like a garbage chute. Yeah, in the amenity room. Yeah. But I will make note of that. It's a good point, Matthew. I agree. I would imagine it goes in there, but I want to clarify that piece because you're right. The staircase leading down afterwards next to that existing building is pretty extreme, but I'll make note of that.
That's a very extreme building, period, entranceway. I mean, the whole thing to me is a very strange setup.
Yeah.
Why you'd have 2 rows of stairs going in there, right, almost next to one another, just around the corner. And, you know, where that umbrella is at the corner there, I mean, why don't they put a raised, elevated lift that goes up even to put the person on the same level? I mean, my mother had one put in at our house before just to get her up the front stairs because she was in a wheelchair. So we couldn't do that. So we put one in, and they came in and they put it in for us. And when she passed away, they took it out again. So I mean, it was a wonderful thing that they did. But I can't understand them when these guys are designing these places. This is the weirdest design I think I've ever seen. Sorry, but it is.
Well, you're not offending any of us, so no need to apologize. Yeah, this one's tough, and like I said, I'm curious to see I don't know how they plan on addressing, especially that front. I don't know if they're going to have the room to do it. I've been surprised before, so maybe they'll surprise me again. But yeah, there's not a lot of space for them to increase out without, I think, then kind of ruining their steps leading into the front doors, because
Yeah, but the
there's
residential
rules there as
building
well.
is flat. And then when you come over to the residential condo building, when we had at the back and everything, but at the front we have the stairs and everything. It's the strangest system. I mean, you'd think that they would have come together. And I mean, making those lifts doesn't make the building beautiful. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really, really strange.
I've added that comment in though, Joanne, because even from the backside, to what Matthew was mentioning, right? If they are going to be asked to bring their garbage out, there needs to be an access over to that area as well. So I've added in that lift comment to actually correlate with that discussion. So I've noted that down.
Really strange. Yeah. Well.
Just thinking. Could just add a back access to the elevator.
Could they add a back access to the elevator? Is that what you're asking? I don't know. Maybe I'll write it down as a question, but I don't know whether or not whether that'll affect the structure of the building, right? Like putting that in, no idea, no engineer, but I can definitely, that's a good point, whether or not they can create direct access to the elevator from the exterior for them to be able to go up.
Wouldn't it? It'd
Yeah.
be an advantage if they did something like that.
Yeah, it's a good point. So I'll add that in. Good idea, Max. Okay. I'm not hearing any other comments, so Rochelle, I'll pass it back over to you.
Okay, perfect. All right, so if there are no further comments or questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that carries. Moving on to item 6.5, memorandum from Accessibility Advisor regarding site plan application ZBA 2021-04 and SP 2021-09. This is submission number 1, and it's for 14,700 and 14,720 to 14,760 Yonge Street. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Joanne will move.
Thank you, Joanne, and a second.
Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew. Okay, Matt, you can lead us with this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this looks like it's going to be that Canadian Tire Plaza. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the intersection that we're taking a look at over here, right? Yonge Street, Henderson, and Murray. That's like the old Canadian Tire and
yes, it is. Yes.
Winners and everything over there, right? So it looks like that all is, from what I'm gathering, it looks like that's all getting plowed down, and they're putting in some new units, and maybe these current retailers will be relocated into these. I'm not too sure, but that's what we're taking a look at here. This is going to be a multi-phase project, so we're going to focus basically on phase 1, which is basically the Yonge Street Henderson location over here. So you can see that blue line running across the development. So this is going to be part of phase 1. Phase 2 is going to lead all the way over to Murray Street. And then it looks like what they're proposing afterwards is taking a look at the Edward Street area past Murray, and then even looks like on the other side of Henderson at some point, they might be taking a look at that, or they might be keeping those buildings the same. But we will take a look at phase 1 for the time being. These look like they're going to be some substantial commercial buildings being added in over here. So just taking a look before we go into the actual site plan applications, you can kind of get a basic elevation view of what these buildings will look like compared to what they are right now. Jumping into phase 1, the site plans were very basic, so I think we will get submissions 2 and 3 with a little bit more detail for us to kind of dive into what we think of the actual units themselves. But they did provide us some drawings. So this is just a basic drawing. You'll see they have 4 main buildings being added in over here. The southeast building closest to Yonge and Henderson looks like it has some kind of pathway leading between the 2 buildings, but they all have connectivity between the 4. So I'm just going to skip past these main elevation drawings and we'll kind of jump into like the nitty gritty over here. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so we can all see, including my bad eyes, what we're taking a look at over here on our screen. Okay, so a couple of comments with the barrier-free parking. What you'll notice is, let me just zoom in a little bit more. The measurements for the actual barrier-free parking spots do not meet the basic requirements. So they have to meet the minimum 2.7 meters for any of the type B spots. You can see over here, all of them are indicated as 2.6. So they're going too small, even for the type B barrier-free parking. And you'll notice that amongst all of the barrier-free parking that they have provided, including on the opposite side, that none of it is type A. So they will have to adjust for that, making sure they have equal distribution between both type B and type A barrier-free parking spots. So I've asked the developer to basically just come back to us with that. So we'll see what they show us afterwards. The parking that they have provided is at least close to any of the elevator lobbies. So I'm going to kind of just jump back and forth here. So I apologize, I'm jumping between the buildings for you guys. But you can see over here on, it looks like the northeast building that they have the spots right next over to the elevator lobby. And then on the southeast side, same thing, they have barrier-free parking available right next to the elevator lobby for that commercial building. On the back side, so now we're taking a look at the southeast building, same story. You have a number of barrier-free parking spots available with a crosswalk leading over to the vestibule, which has an elevator unit that leads into all of the units that you have over there. Now, like I was mentioning, the buildings look like they have decent connectivity. So you can see that there is an exterior path of travel that leads around the buildings. They do have some on-street parking available over here. None of it has been indicated as barrier-free on-street parking. That's something I guess the committee can chime in on, whether or not you guys believe that we really want on-street parking over here. My preference would be for them to just focus on the off-street parking lot. And if we wanted additional parking, I would rather see it over there. I never really see on-street barrier-free parking. That's great. So that's my 2 cents, but you guys can chime in afterwards. But continuing on, you can see the path of travel leads around the buildings. And then they do have some connectivity pieces that lead outside of it. They do have some snow piling locations, Joanne. So I don't know if you can see that on your end, taking a look, but they do have that indicated in here as well. But I had no comments past that, just because like you can see, these drawings are pretty preliminary, nothing crazy over here. And they're gonna have to address the concerns that I already mentioned with the barrier-free parking. Here you just kind of get another elevation look at what the units look like from the top. No rooftop terraces, nothing located on the top of these buildings. Leading into the insides of them, you'll see that, again, nothing substantial for us to really talk about. Like, it's very basic, right? Like you can see that they're providing a retail spot, lobbies, but no real information about what's really being placed into here. So I didn't have any additional comments. If you guys feel like we want to jump into that detail already, we can start commenting about if, like for the retail or the amenity spaces, if they're going to have counter spaces, we can mention to them about induction loops and that kind of thing. But I haven't commented it on the first submission just because I wasn't overly sure what exactly they're going to be putting in over here right now. As you can see, again, 2-story units, but not much more detail past that. Just let me zoom out again here. Zoom in on these guys. So same thing, just more floor plans, basically jumping in between the units, not much more detail. And then let's just continue along here. So same story, pretty much across the board, where they're just giving us the basic drawings. Hallways are obviously accessible between all of the units and the elevators, but there was no other detail really past that. And so past that, in terms of comments, I mentioned what we always do in terms of making sure that they have evacuation chairs as a consideration for the staircases next to the elevators. And then, like I said, for the customer service lobbies, they can focus on the induction loops, but this is still in the early stages where they haven't really identified whether or not those are going to be available. So this one was a little bit of a doozy to go through. There's obviously a lot for them to fix over, but I'm curious to see if you guys want to dive into more detail or if we wait for the next submission to come in for us. But I'll pass it back over to the committee for comment.
I just have a quick question, Matt. This is all commercial, right? And is there is there access from inside to these spaces, or is it all just outside? Because I couldn't really tell by the plans whether or not, because it said like there's hallways, and if there's a lobby, I wondered, was that just for the employees' access, or is there some access point for customers? I guess I'm just a bit confused with this one.
Yeah, well, it's a big one. We have multiple units to take a look at. So there is access points. You can see over here, this is off of Yonge Street. So off of the path of travel, there is access into the main lobbies. And then from the main lobbies, you would either be able to walk around if they have main floor places to go into, but it looks like most of them are going to be elevator access. So then they would go into the elevator, access floor 2, 3, and so on to get into the other units. But that's a good question, because past that, you can see, for example, on the main floor over here, it looks like they would have to go through the lobby or around in order to get to these back 2-story units. So I don't see that connectivity piece, which might be something for us to take a look at. Yeah, even on this back building, it looks like these are all accessed from the outside exterior path of travel.
Okay.
And then this one, yeah, so these are all the level 2s that we were looking at. And so these ones are connected through the hallway. But yeah, on the main floor, on the previous drawing, it looks like they would have to use the exterior path of travel to enter into these buildings. So they would have their entrances on the outside, because over here on the inside, you can see that they have their actual barrier-free parking. So it looks like they all have connectivity from the exterior path of travel to enter into the units. And then basically anything from floor 2 and up would be elevator access.
Got it. Thank you.
Good question.
In that case, they want to recommend on street barrier-free parking.
Are you asking me, or are you telling me you would like to see additional barrier-free parking?
I'm just thinking for the outer unit.
For the outdoor units, yeah. Yeah, you know what, that makes a lot of sense, actually, because I know I was mentioning earlier that's not my preference, but now that we're looking at it, and after Rochelle's comments over here, it looks like most of the access is from the outsides of the buildings on the main floor over here. So the drawings aren't the best, but I will look deeper into this, because now we're looking at this drawing. You can see that they've indicated that there is a barrier-free path to some of these units, and then you can see a staircase, which is going to be an issue. So maybe we do have to look at providing on-street barrier-free parking on the outsides of these units because there isn't all barrier-free access from these parking spots to all of the units. So that's a good collective catch there.
And it looks to me that the doors are all on the outside.
Sorry, Max, just writing down the previous comment. Yeah, it does look like all of the doors that they're showing, at least on this drawing, are on the outside. You are correct. So I'm not sure what they're proposing really here for people to be able to enter in these buildings. So we'll have to dive into that one a little bit more. But I made that comment to speak to our planners about this one to see whether or not there is some kind of connectivity that maybe we're missing here. But I think we've looked at this pretty well, and I'm not seeing great access. Like even we're looking back on these east buildings, you can see like little staircases going along the back side of these story units. So in order to, from our understanding here, it looks like to enter into these buildings, you would only be able to use these on-street parking spots. So that might be, even though we don't like it, it might have to be the solution for at least providing some barrier-free parking to be able to access these outskirt units. So good catch, guys. Great. Any other comments? This one's a confusing one. I didn't like reading this one as well. Like I said, maybe submission 2 will come back with a little bit more detail once they clean up the barrier-free parking and the measurement issues. I guarantee you the parking lot is going to look different because they've measured it out with 2.6 meter spots, and so they're going to have to adjust that significantly. So this should look quite a bit different on submission 2 for the parking at least. So when we get that, we'll take another look at what they provided to us. But it looks like there's no other comments. So Rochelle, I'll pass it back over to you.
Okay, great. All right, with no further comments then, I'll go ahead and call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that carries. We move now to item 6.6, Memorandum from Accessibility Advisor regarding site plan application SP 2020-09. This is submission number 2, and it's for 1588 St. John's Side Road, Block 1. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Joanne.
Thanks, Joanne. And a second?
Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew. Okay, Matt, you can lead us on this then.
Thank you very much. Okay, so last site plan application. We're doing okay on time, which is good. This one is pretty easy, so we'll go over the comments fairly quickly on this one. So I'll give you a quick description of what we've got going on. We've got 3 main units being proposed over here. So there is a DQ grill being provided. We have a daycare for the proposed C building, including its playground over here as well. And then you have the final building, which is going to be a restaurant that's going to be included over here. Now, one of the comments that I indicated right off the bat is the slope. So we'll start off with proposed building A, and I'll zoom in for you guys so you can see this a little bit better. So they have provided a type A spot. They have their access aisle included, curb depressions included in there as well, leading over to the patio. They have, it makes me chuckle, they propose a 7% slope on the path of travel. And so the minimum that we expect for sidewalks, the maximum that we propose for sidewalks is 5%. So I don't know why they would think a cross slope of 7% for the area that people are going to be coming out of their mobility vans or cars is going to be acceptable. So the minimum I mentioned for them was they'd have to meet is at least 5%.
And is that not 1.7%?
Yeah, it's 1.7%.
Am I that blind?
That's
it is 1.7.
Yeah,
So
They're good.
that's good, but I've also mentioned in there that they just meet our standards for the municipality. So 1% and then 1.5 cross slopes. So that should be a lot easier than that. So it's a good thing that we zoomed in on that piece. But yeah, so that comment's addressed. And then past that, I included it for these ones as well. As you can see over here, 2.0, 2.5%. These aren't bad slopes for the barrier-free parking over here for the grill. There was no barrier-free parking included for the actual daycare. So I included that they should have at least a barrier-free parking spot over here. And I imagine that I think we should probably ask for a little bit more on this one. So I wanted to come back to the committee and see how much you guys wanted to see included on this plaza. So they have met the minimum based on the spots. So you can see that they have 1 for the restaurant, they have 2 for the DQ grill, none for the daycare. So I've asked for 1 more there. I would imagine 2 to 3 spots for the daycare is reasonable. But I wanted to ask the committee on their feedback, what they think would be a reasonable amount of spots to ask for the daycare system over here. Any comments on that?
2 would be minimum.
Is everyone okay with that? I guess we can just I'll do the classic if you guys are okay with it, just aye, and if anyone opposes, we can ask that afterwards.
I'm good with that.
Everyone's good with that?
Yeah.
Anyone opposing 2 spots for the daycare system? Okay, perfect. So I'll add that piece in there. Past that, it was standard comments, right? So for the playground system, they're not indicating whether or not this is just going to be kind of like one of those asphalt playgrounds with nothing in it, or if there's actually going to be a system in it. But for them to come back to us, obviously, with any of the sensory or accessibility features that would be added into the playground. But again, from what I've seen from the daycares that we've done in the past, usually they call afterwards and they just tell me that as a part of the development plan, they're just basically putting down asphalt, and then afterwards that they'll be adding in some sensory games or additional items, but it's never usually as a part of the proposed development. So that's a part of why we probably don't see a lot of them coming back with sensory pieces for the playground, is because when they're in the development stage that they're not really considering it. Now, one of the last comments I put in is for them to consider doing some kind of a crosswalk system between these buildings, similar to what we see kind of in the McDonald's Plaza over there on Bayview. There is some kind of at least ability to kind of walk across those plazas from what I remember, but nothing is provided over here. There'll be some issues with them being able to do it just because for their restaurants, they are going to have their auditory pieces over here for the drive-in system. So we'll see if they come back to us with an alternative where they can provide some kind of crosswalks, but I think it'd be nice at least to be able to connect from the proposed daycare side to both these grill areas, at least across that main intersection. They might not be able to provide something between the DQ grill and the restaurant just because of where the auditory pieces are going to be put in for the drive-throughs. But we'll see what they say in terms of spacing, whether that's not a possibility, but I think that would be quite helpful. So that was it for comments on this piece. It was a pretty simple site plan application. The other drawings just kind of go into a little bit more detail for the orientation of each of these buildings, but nothing too extensive. So I'm just going to kind of fly through these pretty quickly. So this is the DQ grill over here. Again, type A spot, type B spot with an access aisle, and the actual curb depression to be able to get into the building. Now, they have the main entrance, it looks like a little bit to the left side of it. One thing that we could ask them to do is basically just to include it right in front of the main entrance, slide those spots over a little bit. I'll let you guys comment on that in a second. Proposed C building, as you can see, no access, no barrier-free access parking at all. So we've commented on that. And then the rest of them are just going to be the elevation drawings for the buildings themselves. So pretty basic parking lot, nothing special or complex about these ones. What do you guys think about the DQ plaza, do we want to bring these spots closer? I'm just going to zoom in a little bit.
So,
You can see building entrance here. Sorry, Matthew, go ahead.
so my opinion is leave them where they are, because one of the main issues with the McDonald's Plaza, they have the accessible parking near the doors. Uber drivers and skip the dishes drivers park in there to pick up the orders, and then they leave, but they take up those spots all the time. So by having them farther away from the door, yes, it's a little bit more of a stretch for someone with an impairment, but they're less likely to be taken up by people that shouldn't be taking them up.
So that's a good comment. I will ask the rest of the committee to speak up on that, because that's going to be an opinion-based thing, right? Do we want to cater for the fact that people are breaking the rules and keep the
So we
spots?
should be fining them.
Yep. Easier
should be
said than done
fining
for
them.
sure. Yeah, that's for sure.
Because even a person driving up to drop somebody off, like at the liquor store, for instance, and the husband drives the car in, but the woman maybe get out and has a cane, and she has the accessibility issue. Most of those people don't realize that they can be fined if they're sitting in the driver's seat. And there's so many issues that I think that the accessibility issue for anybody is that they need it as close as possible and as accessible as possible.
Yeah.
I don't think we should be doing for the other people, and and I think that they should be reported by the people that own the store if they're taking up the space.
So we've got Joanne with keeping the spots closer to the entrance. Matthew is okay with where they are. I'll ask the rest of the committee to chime their opinion on it.
Okay with me, because it looks like there's no space near the entrance for a proper curb cut.
Yeah, there might be room to at least go over one more spot. Like this wouldn't be reasonable, but you could probably at least go over one more spot over here and then have that access aisle, because you can see the doorways are these sideway ones that are leading into the building. So this spot wouldn't work because you'd have basically a slant as soon as you leave the building, but it looks like there should be enough space to move the type A spot at least over one. So, okay, Max is okay leaving it. Matthew's okay leaving it. Joanne would like to see it moved over. And then I think there's John and Rochelle that we would have to use as well for this opinion.
I would say I like it as close as possible, but I don't know, maybe, I mean, to address the possible issue of people parking there when they shouldn't be, I don't know, is it possible to put some kind of signage there, like just to, remind people that they shouldn't be parking there if they're, an Uber driver or whatever? I don't know, but I definitely don't think moving it farther would be fair.
Or even suggest that one of the curbside pickups for Uber Eats or whoever else.
Yeah, do you guys know if that's been a thing talked? I don't know if you guys ever listen into GC or any of the other municipalities talk about that as a standard going in for these parking spots, like a pickup zone for Uber drivers and lifts and stuff.
Well, I think some of them are going to stay, because I heard from Metro that they're so thrilled with the people that can come now and pick it up, and they take it out. They just phone in and say, I'm here, and they take it out. They've been so pleased with it that it sounds like they're going to keep it.
The Superstore has 14 spots now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, John, I didn't catch your vote. You're actually the tiebreaker here. So
Move
it over. Yeah, you're that guy.
Move it over one spot.
Move it over. Okay.
I sit on the fence.
That's a good idea.
My opinion is I agree. I think at least one more spot would be good to just slide over. I don't think there's any harm in there. All these spots are well within the minimum 30-meter access to the main entrance of the building, so they're all acceptable. But if we can slide it over one spot, that would be good. Maybe the developer comes back to us saying that they need a specific amount of space between the building doorway over here before they have any kind of drop for like a ramp. But I don't think that would be the case. So we should be okay with being able to slide over at least one more spot. So thank you for the comments. And then I'll add that in.
My last comment is to connect like this plaza to the sidewalk network. And as you already said and mentioned, connecting the buildings together within the plaza would be good too. So
Yep.
It always bugs me when they're not connected, when the roads are connected, but the sidewalks aren't.
And just further to that suggestion about this, the crossover, maybe a four-way stop at that intersection. And then the
Four-way
proper
stop.
markings. I don't know if there's enough space to allow for it, but at least that would slow down traffic and allow people to cross over.
They are
Perfect.
very
Yep.
nice decorations, John. The stop signs.
Yeah, I know. Slow down and proceed with caution.
Yep.
Okay, so just to make sure I didn't miss anything, guys, so we're gonna move the spot over. Matthew was asking for connectivity to the sidewalks on the main roadways. We have the crosswalk comment in there. John, four-way stop markings to just assist with the crosswalk there as well, and just to slow down traffic, right? Got everything? Okay, sounds good. Any other comments?
Could I just ask a question?
Yep.
With these plazas are, I mean, the one that's out at Wellington and the 404. I mean, you have to drive from Walmart if you're not of a kid's age or teenager's age that you run across the parking lot. But if you wanted to go to the golf store on the other side, I mean, you have to drive. It's so far away. And I don't know why I mean, I know they're doing it for a lot of parking spaces, but they're really making such, unfortunately, I grew up, I guess, with Yorkdale, Hillcrest, and Fairview, and I quite like the indoor plazas because you go in, you get out of the weather in the winter and everything like that. And but anyway, I just don't know why they're so spread out. I just don't get it.
I also don't know. So I don't have an answer on that piece, Joanne. But
they're taking up more space than they are for an indoor, and I guess I know the indoor takes more, I guess, to put the roof on and do that type of thing. I mean, Bayview Village Plaza started out as an outdoor plaza, and it got closed in and covered over years ago. And but I don't know. They're much better to get around in and stuff for me. You know, to go in, all you have to do is go in once. You're not going from one place to the other place to the other place all the time. It's I don't know why they've just gone away from it all anyway. But more American. The thing is, the one with the penguins on it. It's quite an American organization, and you know, especially if it comes from the southern states. They don't have the problems we have up here with winters.
No, that's a Canadian company.
Well, I understood it was originally from the States.
Oh,
but
Canadian.
I don't know. It could be Canadian
All
now,
Canadian.
but I don't. Yeah, but anyway, it's just too bad. I just find it too bad that we've gone the other way. But anyway, thanks anyway.
Thanks, Joanne. Any other comments? Questions, concerns?
No.
Okay, so that's that last one. And Rochelle, back over to you.
Okay, all right. With no further comments, then I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries. Okay, so we have come down to 6.7, our roundtable discussion regarding the Town of Aurora Accessibility Plan 2018 to 2024. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion?
Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew. And a second?
John?
Thanks, John. Okay, so you can lead us on this, Matt?
Yeah, so we have hit 9 o'clock. Linda, you can guide me on this. I think I have to ask whether or not the committee would like to continue or if they'd like to take a break. Linda, let me know if I know I've butchered that, so you tell me what I'm doing wrong here. Linda, are you there?
Oh, sorry. Yes, go ahead. That's fine. You can ask the committee.
Okay. is everyone okay to continue on? We have one more item over here. I don't imagine I'll be more than like 10 to 15 minutes. If you guys would like a break, we can take a 5-minute break, or we can do what we've traditionally done, which is just kind of continue. So you guys let me
Continue
know.
on.
I'm
Just
okay to
continue on.
continue.
Yeah.
Let's get it.
Everyone's good. No one needs like a bathroom break. Yeah. Awesome. All right. I like that. Cool. Okay. So a couple of items to quickly go over for the accessibility plan. So we're going to have a very quick turnaround to our next meeting. I think it's like 2 weeks before we meet for our November meeting. So a piece on the agenda. So I know I've sent out the draft plan over to you guys electronically. Joanne, you'll be receiving it in the package coming in for November. So it will officially be tabled for us for a committee approval of the draft. So it's not a final copy, just the draft. So that'll be coming over to you guys for the November committee meeting for us to discuss. In terms of comments, if I could have committee comments back from you guys by, so we're going to meet, I'm going to do a public consultation on November 24th. So we will have official material being sent out through social media and everything for the public to be able to comment in and see what else they'd want added in. I will obviously email all of you guys and notify you guys that it's available. Please share it through your social media network. Let everyone in the community know that this is their opportunity to obviously input for the accessibility plan that's going to be going on from 2022 to 2026. So yeah, that public consultation will occur on November 24th. It's going to be a 2-hour piece. I'll do a presentation on what this term has accomplished over the last 4 years and what we've discussed as the future of what we want to see going in over the next term and the next 4 years. So I'll do a presentation in there, and then there will be a quick Q&A basically amongst all 5 standards for the public to be able to chime in and let us know as a committee what else the public wants to see added in on that plan. We're also going to go ahead with an Engage Aurora survey. So starting in the beginning of November, that survey will be released. It will give an opportunity for the public to indicate what they would like to see on all 5 standards as well. So if people aren't able to make the virtual meeting or don't want to attend it, they can provide feedback through the survey. We'll also indicate that if people don't want to do a survey, they can email me, phone call me, whatever, however they want to provide their feedback, they're more than welcome to. So we're more than accommodating to take feedback pretty much in any form or any matter. We just want to make sure that that word goes out to the community that they can provide input on that piece. So all comments will be due from the public, and I guess final comments from even the AAC will be on December 3rd. So I've kind of brought that in with International Day for Disabilities. So that'll be the day that the survey officially closes, and those comments will close, and we can start building the final draft of our accessibility plan. The plan will go over to council for approval in early months. We'll see how packed GC is, but we're looking at either basically January or February. I will write up a report as well based on the findings that we get back from the survey. So we will get a report on what the public has provided. We'll attach that over to what the committee has developed as the accessibility plan. And then we'll bring that all over to council for approval. And then it's so sad to say, but the term for you guys actually starts coming up. I believe it's in April. So that plan will then be approved. And then whoever the next term of AAC is that we're going to be working with will be the implementers of all the work that we have done over the last 4 years and what we would like to see in the following 4 years. So exciting and sad all at the same time. So the comments from you guys, if possible, would be great for November 19th. So if you guys don't mind writing that down, I would appreciate it, because then I can make that a part of my presentation to the public, being like, any last couple of items that you guys may have thought of, I can add that piece in there. And so that would be great from you guys. Any comments on that? I know I gave you guys a lot of information. So before I kind of continue on, any comments, questions based on what was just mentioned over there? Okay. Anything else that you guys want to see as like a forum for people to be able to comment on? I think there's quite a good amount of things. Like we have a public consultation virtually through Zoom, surveys, email, phone calls, everything is pretty much open. So anything that I'm missing that you guys can think of? And then we're also doing it over a month. So it's quite a bit. Like we're almost talking 5 weeks of time for people to provide comments. So it's a good amount of time for people to be able to access the information and comment on it as well. Okay. So there will be plenty of time to discuss this. So if you guys think of something, obviously you guys can contact me. That's not an issue. It will be an official memorandum item on the November agenda. So if you guys look it over in the next couple of weeks, when you guys have time, more than enough time for you guys to comment on the upcoming agenda as well. So that's not an issue. Like I was mentioning in the presentations earlier, our town standards are coming up, which is fantastic news. So we've had staff take a look at all the drafts. The proponent designable environment has been fantastic. They've been very responsive. They're very good. I'm actually very excited to show you guys the upcoming product. So I will bring that over in the November meeting as well. It should be ready by then. So I should be able to show it over to you guys. Everything is formatted in HTML. QR codes will be inputted and available for people to be able to access it. So it's looking really good. And yeah, we'll have that officially ready to go for 2022 as an official launch date for any of the new projects that are going to be going forward. So that'll be a huge step for Aurorians, with making sure that we have good accessible buildings and features that go above the basic standards moving forward, which is very exciting. Another piece is the information and communications remediation. So I know we've been talking about that for a long period of time. So I know I've mentioned that accessibility partners are the new remediators that we're going to be working with over the term of this contract. They've been fantastic so far, very knowledgeable, pleasure to work with. It's going to be a long process. So what we've started off with is probably the biggest thing, which we're contributors to, which is all the agendas and minutes that the town has archived over the years. So we are starting from 2021, working backwards, basically just looking at the most relevant information, making sure that that's accessible, and then going backwards to some of the older stuff that we have archived. So this is going to be a multi-phase project. Phase 1 is going to take us into Q2 of 2022, which we hope to have over half of the agendas, minutes, bylaws done. And then we're going to have to go in and continue on from there. So it's going to be a long process going through thousands and thousands and thousands of pages, but that's underway and exciting. And so we've been communicating with the province. They're aware of our plan and our timelines, so we have no issues in terms of that piece as well. And then the last piece that I wanted to chat with you guys and related to the information communication standard is we're proposing we're going to amend the bylaw for fees so that any of the developers that are providing us all of these site plans moving forward, that it's their responsibility for them to provide it to us in an accessible format. So basically they can do two things. They could either use us as the middle person where they submit their plans to us, and if they don't know how to remediate or they don't have a remediator to do it on their behalf, the town will charge them to send it over to accessibility partners, and they will make the documents accessible. So that way, when we have them posted online immediately, they're good to go. Or they have the option of doing it themselves and providing us with a PAC-3 report indicating that it does meet PDF UA standards for accessibility. And so we're covering the costs of future documents coming into the town from these developers, ensuring that they're paying to ensure that their documents are accessible when they provide it to the municipality for review amongst the committees and council. So that was a big piece as well that will be coming through in the next couple of months. And that was pretty much it in terms of the accessibility plan updates. I don't have anything else to discuss, but as always, the table is open for anyone to bring something up or discuss any of the items I just went over. So the table is back over to the committee members. Everyone's ready to end the night. I see how it is. All right. Yeah. So like I said, next meeting, we don't have presentations coming up, and there was only, I think, 3 site plans. So we'll get through that fairly quickly, nothing complicated. I will go through the plans thoroughly just to go over exactly what we've inputted on there. So we will spend quite a bit of time going through the accessibility plan. So like I said, please read through it as much as you possibly can. If you don't get a chance to, we will go through it in the meeting through all 5 standards to ensure that everything has been checked off and you guys have had all your voices and concerns met. And then we'll kind of go from there. So other than that, I think, Rochelle, you're good to close this off.
Okay, so with no further comments on that, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? All right, that carries. Okay, we move on to informational items, but we have no informational items. So that brings us to adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew. In a second.
No.
Thanks, Max. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. And we're done.
Alrighty. Good meeting.